everybody, you're watching the Creative Underground. I'm Paul Carhart, and we're going to go and we're going to circle back around now, and we're going to deal with that very first Elvin's Pet Peeve comic strip that I drew back in January. And we're going to color it, and we're going to post it. So, so this is the very first time I've drawn these characters, inked and penciled them and everything since 1992, I think. And I've got many more new ones storyboarded that I'm hoping to do here pretty soon and start a whole new series of them. This is the first one that brings Peeve back from where he's been, which is another subject. So we're going to post this out on the website. We're going to color it first. So on the classic, quote, classic Peeve comic strips, those were intended for newspaper distribution, and they were done in black and white. And I even did some halftone grayscales in there with that intent. So I'm keeping those as I post them on the web in their classic state, in their original state. Doesn't mean I won't colorize them at some point, because I probably will. But they're going to be, right now at least, in their original state that they were originally drawn and intended to go on newspapers. But for these new ones, we have a whole different kind of set of choices for distribution in our modern times. And so the new ones I am colorizing from the outset, and they will be colorized, all the new ones that you see that are posted that are in color, those will be new. I'm also using a designation of the 2018 at the beginning of the name of the numbering of the comic strip to designate that these are new comic strips as well. So if you want to read them in order, they'll probably skip around a little bit because there'll be, several classic ones every month, and then I think once a month or so I'm going to try to get a colored new one out. But we're sticking to the once a week thing. But those will be the classic ones from 91 and 92 in order, starting with number 1. But then I'm interspersing once a month a new color one. That's the way I'm hoping the schedule will go for now. Although next week will be an exception to that, because this very first comic strip is actually a two-parter. So first part is first, and then the second one. So all that to say, the comic strip's actually already out there, I think. It's at www.paulcarhart.com. Click on the top right corner, and you'll see the picture of Peeve. Click there, and you'll get the Peeve page that has all the comic strips on it. But what we're going to do today, in this video, is a little behind-the-scenes colorizing of it. So I'm going to show you basically how I color this thing in Photoshop, basically. So I'm kind of old school, as I mentioned before, and in the sense that I like to draw my cartoons on artboard, on my drafting table, and then I scan them. So what I've got here is I have to actually scan them in a lot bigger, they're bigger than the scan window, basically. So I have to scan them in 2 pieces, and I have to piece them back together in Photoshop, and then I can do what I need to do to them. So in this case, I had already started coloring this thing when I realized, hey, this would be a good video. So I just set up a camera over my shoulder, and hopefully you can see what's going on here. So I'm colorizing this little poof cloud of dust here. We're running this at a pretty high fast forward so that I don't bore the heck out of you. So I'm just painting. I'm using the darken setting on the regular paintbrush so that all my black lines still come through. I'd already done that, so I'm stealing color from the first frame so I get the colors the same from one frame to the next. So the road color was established in the first frame, so I'm doing that. And like I said, I'm using the darken setting in the for the brush. So so I'm going through. A lot of times I'll do the outlines and around things that are tight first, and then I'll go in with a bigger brush and just kind of paint the whole thing. I'm not going in and doing lots of shadows and stuff like I a lot of times do, because I want this to feel more like a cartoon, like a TV cartoon or a Flash. I want it to seem flat and very cartoony. So I'm not going in and adding all kinds of highlights and shadows. I'm just putting in basic colors and I got a lot of different characters on this first or the second frame of this thing, which is the first comic strip, the first part of the two-parter, and I want to differentiate between them using color because it's kind of a big crowd there. So the first frame, is very clean, and the second frame, I've got all these. In fact, I had to go to a smaller pencil and pen size to draw them, to get them, the lines in there and make them not seem too much. You can see Sirloin up front there is a much darker ink weight than what I used everywhere else. So here is actually one of the first times I think I've ever colorized Elvin. I've always drawn him in black and white. Almost all the T-shirts that I did back in the 90s were just Peeve. And in fact, he was a different color scheme anyways. He was brown and yellow. And then when I started hooking up and trying to pitch this stuff with Joe White, did Peeve turn to a more otherworldly color of green with purple arms and legs, which is what I'm going to stick to here. And then there's a story reason why it happened. So, which will come about in future comic strips. So keep coming back. Come back every week and every month for these new ones. So Elvin's an elf, so I wanted him to have sort of woodsy colors. But Peeve is also green. He's sort of a weird green shape, or green color, like a bright fluorescent green. So I wanted to be able to do green colors and woodsy colors for Elvin that didn't really confuse you with the coloration of Peeve. So he's an elf. He's got a kind of skin-colored, human-colored face, and then Gerard has the same thing. Although I think I'll give Gerard a little bit of a red nose because we don't know if he's just always tired or if he's maybe a little drunk too. So, anyways, so this is the first time I've colored Elvin, I think. And occasionally as I'm going, I'll zoom back out and see what it looks like from a distance and see where I've crossed lines and stuff. That's what I just did there. So now I'm doing Gerard's boots. Gerard's boots are going to be he's the dwarf. Gerard's boots are a little bit darker than Elvin's because he's a miner. And so he's going to be in the mines working. And so I've given him sort of a little bit dirtier coloring, a little more muted color, a little bit. So he's got sort of a raspberry shirt, but it's sort of a muted raspberry. And his boots are darker. He's just a dirtier character than Elvin. Elvin's more of a domestic type character. I gave him the same skin tone as Elvin, but like I said, I'm going to give him a little bit of a red nose. Some of the airbrush effects that I did, I just put on a separate layer. So I just basically did this in 2 layers. Actually, I did it 3, if you count the other file. So once I've merged the two sides of the scan together, I'm saving that file as it is. So I've got a version of this that is just like the classic ones. The black and white one could run in a newspaper. It's perfect. It's at high enough resolution. It can be reproduced in books, whatever. That's part of the purpose of scanning these things, actually, is for future publication as a book, because I'd like to do that. But at the same time, I'm also trying to gather a following, and I want to publish these things online. So I'm saving a black and white copy of the thing as a separate file. Then I save a copy of that file to color it. So I'm coloring with a darken setting on the brush on the actual artwork layer. So it's not on a separate layer. I could do that if I wanted to, but it would take a lot longer and it'd be more work than I want to do. So anyways, so here I'm just kind of coloring on top of the black and white artwork, and using the darken setting, it lets the black ink show through. Then, if you notice here on Gerard's nose, I've got like sort of a redness to it. That's a separate layer that I put on. On a separate layer. So I'll give a little highlight to Gwen's lips here too. Gwen is the serving maid at the bar that is on again, off again with Elvin in a romantic. Anyways, so that's you can see I gave Gerard sort of a more modern hot yellow hard hat. It also has a light on it. So he's a dwarf. He's fashioned in the way, sort of in the way of the dwarves from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, in the sense that he's a miner, and he's a dwarf. He's got a long beard. I'm also pulling from Tolkien a little bit. I'm pulling from all the different fairy tales and you know, those fantasy kind of stories to inform this thing. But it's really its own kind of cartoon as well. It's just pulling from things that are familiar to people. So there's Gerard. I think next I'm going to colorize the dragon. So the dragon's name is Sootlips. He actually was named Cerinthomax, I think it was, when I originally came up with him. I came up with him in middle school, and I used to play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. And I used to read this magazine called Dragon Magazine, and it was a magazine for Dungeons and Dragons players. And I thought it would be a great idea to have a comic strip that would go with Dungeons and Dragons. So I came up with this dragon character. And I sent it in to him, and I was willing to do it for free. I didn't care. I just wanted to see it published. But I think his name was Cerinthomax. And they wrote back and they said, thanks, we think your artwork's great and, all these things, but we don't really want to publish your artwork, your cartoons. And, we think also Cerinthomax is really sort of a mouthful. So, I kind of tabled him, put him on the shelf and stuff. But when I started coming up with the Peeve characters, I thought, well, I've got a knight. Why shouldn't I have a dragon character as well? So I pulled him back out. He's essentially unchanged from what I came up with in the 8th grade, I think. Except I named him Sootlips, and he smokes a cigar now. He lives in a cave, and there's a little fly off on the right. His name's Fryfly, which is a character that I drew in 6th grade. My 6th grade teacher, Mr. Leftwich, let me to draw cartoons of him and put him on the board, and that was my first cartooning on a regular basis. It's basically a pair of eyes with a stick figure body and a couple wings and a couple antennas. But he lives in the cave with the dragon, and they both fly, and they're sort of an odd couple. Like the dragon's always smoking, the fly doesn't like the smoking, the dragon's loud and crass and brash, and the fly's more civilized. And it really is the odd couple. Here's the Fryfly. I gave him a little bit of blue to his eyes and a little bit of blue to his wings, I think, just to kind of make him stand out, although he's going to be against the blue sky, too. So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to waste your time with showing you the whole thing and both frames. If you want to see it, check it out online, the final version. And, yeah, that's pretty much it for coloring this thing. It's not rocket science. But it is fun. I also wanted to draw attention to the shirt I'm wearing. It's the very first Peeve shirt that features sirloin of beef. And it's a sort of a spoof off of those Star Wars Stormtrooper and Darth Vader shirts that you see out there with the different emotions. Since sirloin, you only ever see him in his helmet. I thought that would be a funny shirt to do. It's a parody of that. So it's available out at cafepress.com/Peeve, and you can get yours today. Thanks again for watching The Creative Underground. I'm Paul Carhart, and I'll see you next week.